warning that the funding for Ukraine will run out this month if the Congress does not pass President Joe Biden's emergency supplemental spending request. The request has been stalled for weeks on Capitol Hill. The White House warned that the Biden administration has only enough funding for one more aid package to Ukraine this year before Congress will be required to greenlight new contributions to Kiev. Washington has committed more than $43 billion in military assistance to Ukraine since Moscow launched its deadly full-scale invasion of its neighbor in February last year. But U.S. Republicans in the Congress claim the Biden administration is prioritizing funding to Kiev over addressing domestic problems like border security. The Republicans have blocked a new funding request by Biden administration worth over $105 billion to support Ukraine, Israel, Taiwan, and the U.S. southern border. The Pentagon says it still has $4.4 billion in presidential drawdown authority to provide weapons to Ukraine directly from the Defense Department inventory. But the weapons it can transfer to Ukraine are limited as the funding to replenish U.S. stockpiles are dwindling. Pentagon Comptroller Mike McCord urged Congress in a letter to act on the president's request for the additional funding. Ben Aries is the founder and editor-in-chief of BNE IntelliNews. He was the former Moscow bureau chief for the Daily Telegraph. Ben is now joining us from Berlin. Ben, thank you for making time for us and welcome.
Pleasure.
Now, Ben, the U.S. says it's running out of cash or funds. So what next for Ukraine? Where does President Volodymyr Zelensky run to next for assistance?
It's a big problem. They just signed through the 2024 budget, and there's a deficit in there of $43 billion. And the Ministry of Finance has admitted 29 billion of those is unaccounted for, is unallocated. They don't know where it's going to come from. And so Ukraine is again running into a financial crisis, in so much as in September of the first year of the war, it started to run out of money, and the government looked like the financial situation was going to collapse. And we're back in the same place now, that Ukraine desperately needs money to simply run its economy, keep the things moving on while the war is going on. And it's entirely dependent. This 43 billion is entirely going to be funded by Ukraine's international partners. So the 61 billion that the States is talking about is a huge sum and a key sum in order to close that gap. At the same time, the EU is debating a 50 billion euro package, but that's also got snarled up due to a Hungarian veto. And so the vote on that's been put off until February. And Ukraine's facing the prospect of starting the next year and running out of money in the first 2 months. And then it won't have money for more arms, weapons, and that will seriously affect its ability to fight the war on the battlefield.
Let's talk about the war, Ben. Talk to us about the ramifications of these latest developments and what sort of roadblocks lie ahead for Ukraine, considering funding is a key factor in this war.
Ukraine is almost entirely dependent on outside help. I mean, its own industry, particularly its defense industry, has been smashed or doesn't exist. There's a plan to invest and make arms production facilities in Ukraine, but those don't exist yet. And without this money in the short term, American experts, military experts, were doing an assessment in the last week, and they said within a few weeks of January that Ukraine will start to run out of long-range missiles. And then within a month or two, it'll run out of ammunition for its air defense. And that's key because Russia's expected to target the power and heating facilities during those coldest months of the year. And eventually by summer, it'll run out of artillery shells. And the artillery shells are the workhorse of this conflict. And without those, then Ukraine will be forced into a situation where it may have to capitulate.
All right, I've been talking to Ben Aries, who is the founder and editor-in-chief of BNE IntelliNews. Ben, thank you very much for talking to us today. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.